Hello friends, this is Rishi Gupta and today I am here with a video which is my attempt to explain the family tree of the Netflix original Dark. So guys, Dark is an extremely confusing show and it really requires a lot of concentration and memory to remember everything that's happening there. So guys, the thing that you see on your screen is basically a family tree from the official website itself. So I thought that this was the best way to explain this tree the best I could. So, guys, first of all, at the outset, let me explain that there are two worlds that exist apart from the origin world. So, there are actually three worlds that exist. One is the origin world where things are going as per normal laws of nature and nothing is, astray. And there are two other worlds that were created due to the abnormality that occurred during the experiment on time travel by H.G. Tanhouse. And let's call them world A and world B, are basically caught in a time loop and things keep on happening again and again, and they will continue to happen again and again until eternity, unless something is done about it. So guys, there are two worlds, that is world A, let's call it world A, which is predominantly where Jonas is the central character and he eventually becomes Adam, and world B is basically the world where Martha is the central character and she eventually becomes Eve, or Eva. So these are the two worlds that exist, but the show predominantly takes place in the world A, which is Jonas's world. So all the characters you know, all the characters you recognize, all the relationships that you recognize are predominantly from Jonas's world, which is world A. So guys, I will be talking about the world A predominantly because that is the world that is explored in much detail in the show, and world B, which is Martha's world, hardly makes an appearance towards the end. So guys, let's get started. So we will begin with the edges of this tree so that we can work our way towards the inside and understand how people are related to one another. So guys, let's start with the Tanhouse family. So as you can see, the Tanhouse family is basically a very old family from Winden, and they are involved in the work of making clocks, at least initially they were. And the first important character that we come across is Gustav Tanhouse. So Gustav Tanhouse is a member of Sic Mundus, who basically are the cult that manages all of the time travel, and he knows that time travel is possible, but he is killed before he can do anything about it by the unknown, that is the son of Martha from world B and Jonas from world A. So he is one of the first characters from the Tanhouse family that is involved with Sic Mundus. So after that, the next important character in the Tanhouse family tree is H.G. Tanhouse. So as we already know, H.G. Tanhouse had a family in the origin world, wherein his son, his daughter-in-law, and granddaughter died in a car crash. And H.G. Tanhouse was really upset about it, and he wanted to do something to change or to reverse the tragedy that had happened. So that is why he made it his life's mission to make a time machine and reverse this tragedy that had occurred with him. So he is the first character who actually masters time travel or even attempts time travel. So the one who's been directly related to him is Charlotte. So Charlotte is actually not blood relation for Edgy Tanhouse, but she was basically brought to him by a couple of women, and the night his family died in the car crash. So basically, he considered that baby to be her granddaughter and raised her as his granddaughter. And that's why he named her Charlotte, because the name of his granddaughter who had already died in the car crash was Charlotte. So that is why he adopted Charlotte and raised her as his own granddaughter. So that's how these two people are related, not a blood relation but a relation of adoption probably. So once that is done, we Charlotte grows up and marries Peter Doppler. So Peter Doppler is the son of Helge Doppler. So Helge plays an important character in all the seasons because he's the one who was used by Noah and Adam to bring kids for experiments. So Helge Doppler is basically basically knows what had happened in the past, and he knows that it's going to happen again, and he knows that the time is ticking. So that is why Helge Doppler, who was mutilated by Ulrich Nielsen, the time traveling Ulrich Nielsen, is in his old age and now living with Peter and Charlotte and the kids, and is basically probably in trauma, and is saying again and again that something's going to happen again, it will happen again, and tick tock, tick tock. So that's how Helge, Peter, Charlotte are related. And Helge Doppler's family, probably not that important family tree, so probably we'll skip that to make to keep matters a bit simple. So, guys, let us now discuss the most complicated or paradoxical part of this family tree, which is the relationship between Charlotte and Elizabeth. So, as we already know, as it has been mentioned in the show, that Charlotte was Elizabeth's mother and Elizabeth was Charlotte's mother. So, this is a bootstrap paradox in time travel stories that exists in most of the movies and books and TV shows. So, so what I mean by a bootstrap paradox is that a piece of information that exists in a universe does not have an origin. For example, there is a book that has been mentioned in this show, which is A Journey Through Time by H.G. Tanhouse. So, H.G. Tanhouse, even though the book claims that it has been written by H.G. Tanhouse, but actually it was not written by him. H.G. Tanhouse got this book from a time traveler from the future, and the future H.G. Tanhouse got this from the past H.G. Tanhouse. So I hope you are getting me that there is no origin to this book. The future guy got this from the past, and the past guy got this from the future. So this is something that is called a bootstrap paradox. So again, this is a paradoxical relationship here as well. So you know that Peter and Charlotte get married and they have kids. One of them is Elizabeth Doppler. So Elizabeth Doppler is cannot speak or cannot hear in this particular world, and she eventually goes on to be with Noah, and they gave birth to Charlotte. So, but this relationship between Noah and Elizabeth happens in the post-apocalyptic world, wherein they are together and they are alone, in the woods, and they give birth to Charlotte. But as you might recall, the older version of Elizabeth and Charlotte, or the time traveling version of Elizabeth and Charlotte, steal baby Charlotte from Noah and Elizabeth in the woods, and basically give Charlotte to H.G. Tannhaus. So that is how this circle is completed. That Noah and Elizabeth had Charlotte, but baby Charlotte was stolen by older Charlotte and Elizabeth and was given to H.G. Tannhaus. So this, I hope you're getting this. This is a bit complicated, but yeah, that's what it is. But then you also know that these are mother and daughter to one another, so that's the biggest paradox that I believe exists in this particular story. So but again, we'll probably revisit Noah as well. So Noah right here makes an appearance again in the time tree, sorry, family tree, wherein you see that Noah basically was the son of Bartos and Silja. So they basically named him Hano, but eventually once he came into the service of Adam, Adam named him Noah, and he was tasked with the responsibility of keeping the chips in place and getting the kids for all the experiments that they were doing, the time travel experiments. So that's how Noah makes an appearance at this side of the time tree, family tree, and at this side as well. So again, so just to complete this part of the family tree, Peter and Charlotte had another daughter who was Francisca, and Francisca eventually falls for Magnus, and they become loyal servants, or rather, loyal disciples of Adam, and they are committed to doing whatever Adam tells them to do. So this is how this particular story gets completed. So guys, now let us discuss the Kahnwald family. So the Kahnwald family is at the center of all of this mess that has been created by all the time travel, because Hannah, along with Mikkel, gave birth to Jonas, who eventually becomes Adam, and is playing the game of chess when it comes to time travel. But this family tree is not as simple as it seems. So as we know, Hannah and Mikkel, although were married, but Mikkel, as a child, disappears in 1987 to 1987, and he is eventually adopted by the nurse Ines Kahnwald, and that is how Mikhail grows up from 1987 along with Hannah, who is also a kid back then, and they grow up together and get married and eventually have Jonas. So the tricky thing here is that Hannah had eyes only for Ulrich, and during their school days, but Ulrich was all smitten by Katharina. So Hannah eventually gave up and married Mikhail, and they had Jonas. But this is not that simple. Hannah, with the help of Jonas, gets her hands on a time traveling machine, and she travels back to 1954 to have an affair with Egon Tiedemann. So Egon Tiedemann was a young officer back then, and these two people get together, and as a result, Hannah becomes pregnant. And even though Hannah wanted to terminate that pregnancy, she decides to keep Silja, who eventually is her daughter, and Egon doesn't even know that Silja exists. So Silja does play an important role in the story as well. Silja time travels back to 1911 to meet, along with Hannah, obviously, to meet Jonas, who has become Adam now, to probably seek help or just be with his son Hannah. Hannah travels to 1911 to be with his son, but Jonas kills Hannah and basically asks or sends Silja into the future to help Elizabeth. So, as you know, Elizabeth cannot speak and cannot hear, so Silja becomes her advisor and her ears and her mouth. So, this is how Silja and Elizabeth come together in the post apocalyptic world. But Silja then also travels back in time once her task in the post-apocalyptic world is done to meet Bartosz. Bartosz in I think 1900 and, sorry 1890. So in 1890, Silja and Bartosz come together and they get married and have Hanno and Agnes. So these are the two kids that we have already discussed that Silja and Bartosz had. So this is how the family tree works. So Silja basically dies, giving birth to Agnes, the younger sister of Hanno or Noah, and that's how the story of Silja ends. Okay, so now to a relatively simpler part of this family tree, which is the Tiedemann family. So as you know, Egon was married to Doris, and they had Claudia, and Claudia was married to Bernd, who was at the nuclear power plant, who was the director of the nuclear power plant, and then Claudia took over, and they had a child by the name of Regina, who was eventually afflicted with cancer and was suffering a lot. And Regina was married to Alexander, who takes over the management of the nuclear power plant, and also the secrets and all the horrible things that are happening at the power plant. So this is a relatively simple tree, and then Regina and Alexander have Bartosz, and Bartosz, as I already mentioned, marries Silja and has Noah and Agnes. So again, Agnes and the unknown have a relationship that we'll discuss, but this is how this family tree grows. Again, a relatively simple one, definitely, when taken in context of the show. So guys, let us talk now about the Nielsen family and the knot. So the knot, as it has been mentioned in this season, is the child, or rather the knot is the result of the child conceived by Jonas from world A and Martha from world B. So these people come together to give birth to a child that is called the unknown. So this unknown child normally roams around the timelines as in a set of three, which is the older version of the unknown, the grown up or the middle aged version of the unknown, and the young child version of the unknown. So these people, are basically the people who keep everything going, all the obstacles that the characters might face in order to keep the cycle going, the cycle of time, which is the end is the beginning and the beginning is the end. They are responsible for it. And it has been indicated that the unknown got together with Agnes, and as a result, they conceived Tronte. Tronte Nielsen. So Agnes Nielsen, an unknown, gave birth to Tronte, and Tronte married Jana Nielsen, and they had two kids, Mads and Ulrich. So this is how the entire tree is related. So now Mads is kidnapped by Helge and Noah in 1986. So Mads disappears and Ulrich grows up and marries Katharina, who was his high school sweetheart, and they have a family together, and they have three kids: Mikkel, Martha, and Magnus. So as you can see now that Mikkel is the son of Ulrich and Katharina, and Mikkel eventually goes on to become the father to Jonas. So by that logic, Jonas and Martha is the aunt to Jonas. So the fact that Jonas and Martha get together is extremely creepy and has a very Game of Thrones feel to it. The aunt and nephew timeline that existed with Daenerys and Jon Snow. So this is how the cycle is completed. Katharina's parents don't play that an important role in the family tree. So this is how the entire circle completes, and this is how the timeline or the family tree is. So again, in world B, there are similar relationships, but there are definitely many variations. But as it has been mentioned very explicitly, that in the two worlds, even though the paths are different, but the destination remains the same. So we know that even though the relationships might be slightly different in the world B, but eventually the destination remains the same, and the apocalypse happens in both of the worlds. And the reason of the apocalypse is very explicitly mentioned, the not or the unknown. The unknown basically walk into the in both world A and world B, they walk into the nuclear power plants and cause the accident, and they are the cause of the apocalypse that happens. And this is why the entire circle, continues. The loop of time continues to infinity, and hence the symbol of infinity. So this is what the family tree is. Again, very complicated, but I must say it has been brilliantly done. Time travel done right is one of the rarest things that you can see in a TV show or movie or a book, and this show does it perfectly. And I'm glad for, and I definitely like to give credit to the dark people who have created an exceptional website. You should definitely check it out. That they have detailed everything, and you can almost not find any fault with the timelines or with how things work with time travel. So guys, that was my video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know it's a long video. I hope it added some value. And please pardon me if I have said some things wrong, because even though I have watched this show in a lot of detail, but I might have gotten something wrong, and I'm sorry for that. So please correct me if I'm wrong at some place in the comments. What do you think about this video? Do tell me, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel.